Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Banned Book Club, DPLA's Banned Book Club. My name is John Bracken. I'm the Executive Director here at the Digital Public Library of America, and I have the pleasure to welcome you to the first in a series of events relating to the Banned Book Club. Like so many of you, we on the DPLA team were really taken aback by the upsurge of book banning efforts that really kicked off in 2021, 2020. And we on the team spent a lot of time thinking about what our role and responsibility for taking up that issue. We actually talked to many of you and some of the folks who you're gonna hear about today about how we could best live up to our mission at DPLA, which is to ensure access to knowledge and information in a digital age. And one of the conclusions we came up with as a team, as a community, was in particular, the book bannings ran counter to our access around our mission around access. And that also because so much of the energy and motivation behind the book bannings from what we could observe and learned were really tied to attempts to whitewash and remove Black and queer and brown, and especially Black, brown, queer voices and narratives and experiences from our bookshelves. And that also ran counter to our mission. And so the upshot is, we took on what you're going to hear about today, and built the Banned Book Club to leverage, the powers we see in both libraries and the mission of radical access to information that libraries possess, and the possibility of digital technologies to put those together. We can make the attempts to ban books irrelevant, and hopefully you'll hear more about those efforts today and our efforts to ensure that everyone that wants to read a book can access that book. That's pretty much the end of my spiel. I do want to just also acknowledge and thank so much. The Banned Book Club sits atop and is integrated with the Palace Project, and our partners in Palace is Lyrasis, and you're going to get to hear from the CEO of Lyrasis later in the conversation, and we're really appreciative of that partnership. And as of course is true, as a nonprofit organization, we are thankful to our funders, including, I will mention, Sloan Foundation and Knight Foundation, of which have provided core support for DPLA's ebook work, but also several dozen of you who have stepped up and made donations in the last couple of weeks to help support access to these books that is so relevant and so urgent. And since I'm the first one up, anything I forgot to do, I know that my colleague, Micah May, who directs our ebooks work here at DPLA, will pick up on. So thank you all for joining us. Hope to see you at the next one. Micah.
Okay, yeah, thank you all so much for coming to hear more about the Banned Book Club. We are really excited about this project, which has been, cooking for over a year. And so my goal is just take a few minutes. I'm sure most of the folks here understand the project, but just to explain a little bit about how it works, a little bit of behind the scenes about what went on to make this possible. So as John mentioned, this project is built on the platform that is the Palace Project. The Palace Project is the only end-to-end library-driven solution for e-content service in the country. So it includes a Palace Marketplace where we allow libraries to license books, acquire books, audiobooks, and ebooks that they can lend to their patrons. It includes a Palace Manager, which is a special piece of software that lets libraries bring content together from multiple sources and serve it in the Palace apps in iOS and Android. And so that whole stack is done in partnership with Lyrasis, and this project uses that platform. So this was really an exciting opportunity to take this, library-driven platform that we've been building, in partnership with others in the community for over 10 years, really, and use it to advance our mission, which is access. And we feel like this is, as John said, especially important access, because so often the books that have been removed here are books that are important to marginalized communities that we particularly want to serve. So in terms of kind of the nuts and bolts of how this works, the Palace Project apps use a technology called a virtual library card. So we are able to authenticate users in the specific locations where books have been banned. So we're tracking 224 cities and counties where books have been removed from library shelves. And those are the places where patrons can access these books. We are licensing these books through the Palace Marketplace. So, our distribution system for library ebooks and audiobooks on the same terms that other libraries would be buying them. So DPLA and Lyricists are footing that bill for now, and buying copies of these books so that we can make them available to patrons that want them. One of the things that was very important to us is to carefully review the books. So we tapped a really special group that is part of DPLA called the Curation Corps. We have about a dozen librarians who work part-time with us on the side. Most of them have full-time librarian jobs with other organizations. A couple are retired, and they help us with a number of different tasks where we really need library curation to be at the center of our work. So that includes curating the Palace Bookshelf, our collection of over 17,000 free items that are available really to anyone in the public, but especially easy to integrate into the Palace Marketplace for Palace Libraries. They help us with collection development, support for Palace Marketplace libraries, and curating independent content from our indie portal. But they also helped us review all of these banned books. So I'll be passing this off in a few minutes to Taslin Magnuson, who is Dr. Taslin Magnuson, who is at EveryLibrary, and really made this project possible through her work collecting data about every challenge in the country over the last few years. And our librarians poured through that, and we first tried to determine whether the book had actually been removed from a library's shelves. So that was the trigger for including in this project, is books that had been purchased by a library and they'd been forced to take off the shelf due to a ban. And then amongst that subset of books, we, again, this team of librarians looked at every single title to make sure that in their professional judgment, it really was appropriate for a young adult audience, that it would be available to through the Palace Project. And we believe in all cases, the books that we've acquired are. It's, one of the questions we've gotten most is about, sort of what books have been banned. So I just wanted to share briefly that list for folks. This isn't something we published, but we thought it would be of interest. So these are the sort of top 5 most frequently banned. And by that, I mean the books that have been banned in the most locations. So these are where the books have been taken off the shelves most. And this is the next 5. And I'll also drop those into the chat so people can see those on an ongoing basis. For folks who are interested, as I mentioned, there are 224 cities and counties where books have been removed that we found in data. And that crosses 34 states. I think it could be sometimes surprising, just how widespread this is. It's not just one part of the country. It really crosses, the entire country. So for anyone who is in one of these locations where books have been banned and wants to get access to the project, I would encourage you to go to the App Store or the Play Store and download the Palace Project app. You can find the Banned Book Club library in it. And if you're in one of these places, you'll be able to get a library card, log in and borrow these books. Also, if you're interested in learning more about the project, most of you have seen the Banned Book Club website, which is at, I think my screen share just stopped, so I'll try to resume it. It's at thebannedbookclub.info, and you can also get more detail on this at the Palace Project website, and that's thepalaceproject.org. So we want to move through this quickly and make sure that we have lots of time for questions. And so I want to go ahead and hand this over to our friend and colleague, Dr. Taslin Magnuson. So Taslin works at EveryLibrary, where she supports also the work of the Freedom to Read team at PEN America through their book index of school book bans. And Taslin's work was really critical to this project. As I said, she's been tracking every book challenge in the country for a number of years. And that was the data set that made it possible for us to figure out, where we needed to focus and make these books available. And so we've been working with Taslin for a number of months to get that data and do some additional analysis to sort of map the titles to the locations where they've been banned. And we thought you all might be interested in hearing a little bit from her about that data collection process and some of the other insights that EveryLibrary and PEN America have developed, analyzing the data about book bans in the country. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Taslin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for inviting me, and I'm always so grateful that my data is helpful to people. I should start by saying that I'm not a librarian. I come from a children's literature background, and I started my project actually because L'Oreal Sanderson said, someone should keep track of all this. This is not looking good. And I began to keep track, and it's a media scan that is on the EveryLibrary website of whenever, wherever I found book bans across the country. And so it's slowly but surely developed into something more rigorous and more helpful. And I'm very honored that people find it useful and find it as a resource. So as part of this process, I look Google Alerts. I now understand actually quite a bit about why no one ever did this before, because managing hundreds of Google Alerts and keeping track of them in a Google database is an extraordinarily large task that I completely underestimated. But I do my best, and I provided that material on the EveryLibrary website. And then PEN America, when I put on my pen, I take my me hat off, I put on the pen hat. We do a little bit deeper analysis of the bans that are experienced in school libraries across the country. And they take the data that I have found through this sort of massive search and keep track of, and then refine it a little bit. And there is where we have determined a number of really sad and difficult truths about this banning crisis. Number one, this is absolutely not like the way books are supposed to be challenged in libraries, right? Said I was not a librarian, but I've learned a lot from librarians. It's about like the challenge process is supposed to work. I'm upset, I'm worried, I'm frustrated. I go to my librarian, I go to the school principal, we talk, we discuss, and then we come up with a resolution. And sometimes it's a different book for my child. Sometimes it's a alternative assignment, so on and so forth. We have people across the country, I've discovered, submitting hundreds of challenges at a time. It's designed to be overwhelming, it's designed to be harmful, and it's designed to break the system. And so that's why something like the Banned Book Project is so important, because while librarians are focused on fighting this and working to support the kids have access to books. So at PEN America, we have taken all of these challenges and analyzed a subset of them. And what we have discovered also, in addition to the groups, is that the titles attacked are very exact. Sorry, the chat always distracts me. It's like a little thing to look at. So what we have discovered, and I'm just looking at a different screen so I can make sure to get the numbers right, is that in the fall of 2022, which is the most recent report, 44% of the books attacked had themes of violence and physical abuse. Then going down, 30% had characters of color, either or themes of race and racism, and 26% had characters or themes of LGBTQ content. And when you think about the small amount of books that is actually published during the course of a year in these areas. This is highly targeted and pretty systematic. And so it is distressing, it is frustrating. And we have seen, as PEN refines the data that I collect, we're seeing more done. And that is why efforts like this become even more critical going forward. There are more bans, more places, more school districts, and now public libraries too are absolutely being implicated. So the most important thing, oh, good. People are putting it up. The most important thing to remember about the data that lives on the EveryLibrary website is that it is a collection of media sites. And so from that, I look for evidence of book removal. I look for evidence of school libraries. I look for evidence of where things are and where books may or may not have been pulled off the shelves. And that becomes increasingly difficult, and it will continue to become increasingly difficult as we move forward because schools are changing how they do things. I could keep going on and on. I know I have a limited amount of time, so I want to make sure that I'm not taking away time from anyone. Do I pass it back now, or?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think you're good. If you have anything more to offer, your work has been so critical, but if not, we'll leave more time for Q&A if that works.
Yeah, I'd love to answer questions always.
Okay. Great. So next up, and I've got too many tabs open here, so I've lost track of my notes briefly, but we wanted to introduce Jenny Gardner, who is the head of the small and rural libraries, to give I'm sorry if I botched that slightly, Jenny, to give a little bit of a perspective on how this is actually impacting some of these libraries where books have been banned. So sorry, I've got this up now. Jenny leads the North Liberty Library in Eastern Ohio and is the president of the Association of Small and Rural Libraries. So Jenny,
Iowa, but all these Midwestern states all merged together, Micah.
Sorry, I'm botching my MC duties. I'm fired. Jenny?
It's one of those 4-letter states, Good afternoon, and thanks you guys for having me as well. So I am coming to you, yes, from my directorship at North Liberty Library and also as the president this year for the Association for Small and Rural Libraries. And, in essence, what this project does is really let us know, both librarians and our community members and us as community members, is that we aren't alone in this fight, right? Because this fight is nationwide. And it's pretty scary what's happening out there. And I'm going to give a little background about myself and my library, just so you can know where I'm coming from. I speak nationally I've been speaking nationally this year about libraries and inclusive policies to make sure that we're setting ourselves up to protect our libraries from these types of attacks. And also why it's so important, particularly in our small and rural libraries, that we are offering diverse books and diversity. So this project is near and dear to the work that I do, have been doing, and I'm super excited about it. But I'll tell you that in my library, we think we're pretty set. I say I live in a little blue bubble in Iowa. Our county is one of the few blue counties in the state. And while I wish it wasn't political, it is. It's become political. My friend this week came to visit me this weekend, and she said, wow, librarians are like psychologists and social workers and politicians all in one. So we know we're doing all these things, and to have folks like DPLA on board to help us expand what we can offer is incredible. We're really lucky. In our community, I feel like we're fairly protected, but we just hosted our first ever drag queen story time a few weeks ago, and there were plenty of loud, vocal, a small handful of people, half of them not living in our city, there to tell us why that was a horrible thing that we were doing. We have posters all over our library about diverse books and the reason why we offer diverse books. And then after we had that support, we had wonderful support from our mayor. He showed up at the event. He spoke out on our behalf. He wrote emails that I couldn't have scripted myself any better about the reasons why we do what we do. And that's part of the prep, right? We prepare people, and having DPLA's resource like this helps us prepare more people. And in these small communities, they need it more than anyone probably, where there's one or two librarians in the stacks working and doing the work against a lot of times against a really loud group of people. And so I want to talk a little bit about a town that's near me, which is Vinton, Iowa. And if you're not familiar with it, you can look up Vinton and banned books. A couple of years ago, one of my good friends and colleagues moved back from Wyoming because she was hoping to have a good impact in the small town of 5,000 in Eastern Iowa. And she lasted a year of attacks on her and their community, and her liberal and LGBTQ agenda, they called it, because she was trying to introduce diverse books into her community. She left saying, I just can't do this. I can't do my job well when I'm being attacked constantly. And within another year, 2 more librarians, directors had left that library, and they closed their doors for a week. And part of that was because they weren't prepared. The board wasn't unsupportive. They just they didn't know what to do, really. So they faced criticism and attack for over a year, and they still have some. But for the record, out of their 6,000 children's books in their library, 7 of them, were topics, LGBTQ topics. 170 had Christian themes. So it's really about getting the word out, getting the knowledge out there to people about what we do and why we do it. The chair of the library board talked about discrimination and harassment. So when we have the ability to share these resources like DPLA's Banned Book Club with our communities, we realize that we're expanding people's worlds. And that in itself is the most important thing we can be doing across the country. We're here to help people learn, to experience, study, and teach folks about how their worlds can be broadened. And when we do that, we broaden not only their worlds, but we sustain our communities. So that's what this project, for me, why I'm so passionate about it and what it's doing for everyone. We provide avenues for growth, and when we prioritize diversity and inclusion in our libraries, we give people opportunities to learn empathy and honor cultures of other people. We provide equity and access for everyone, much like, what the whole DPLA's theme is, right? So we're working together with them has been a pleasure, and I'm excited to see it continue. I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Jenny. We really appreciate that. And, all of your work and other librarians like you on the ground is really the key to library access. So now we'd really welcome anyone to put questions. If you can use the Q&A box, that's the easiest way for us to receive those questions. And we'd love to hear what folks are interested in or what you'd like to hear more about with regard to the project. I guess in the meantime, while we're waiting for that, I'll just do a couple more shout outs. Again, super grateful to the EveryLibrary and PEN America teams for the data they were able to put together. Kathy, I see your question. I'll get to it in just one second. I just wanted to give one more thank you, which to John Bracken, actually, to DPLA. I mean, DPLA is a very small organization. We don't have tons of extra money sitting around. But when this issue started to emerge, there was just a real desire to do something to fight back. And I think that was really powerful. We have this unique privilege of being an agile, small, national digital library nonprofit. There aren't many organizations quite like that. And with our partners at Lyrasis, I was really grateful to be able to take action on this issue in an agile way without necessarily needing to wait for someone's approval or for some special funding. So thanks to John and to the DPLA board and to Lyrasis and John Wilkin for supporting that. So Kathy, how will you gather data to make sure impact is happening? Yeah, that's a great question. So we are watching this literally daily. Myself and members of the Lyrasis implementation team can track how the adoption is. As of today, there's about 200 unique users that have created library cards. I guess I would just cite that even though that number is not huge, all of those folks are in these specific locations where books have been banned. They're actively borrowing, and many of them, this may be the only way they can access those titles. So we feel really good about that. And we plan to continue to promote this project and make sure folks are aware of it there. Next question was, beyond addressing book bans, what about supporting our local libraries and librarians? And I would say, absolutely. Others are welcome to chime in on this, John, if you want to. That's really DPLA and Lyrasis' mission. We are both library serving nonprofits, fairly small organizations, and we do everything we can to help libraries have impact. So that's really our main mission. So in terms of this space, the ebook and audiobook space, we do that by providing the Palace Project so that there is a library-driven platform libraries can use to serve content to their users that they have more control over, that they can sort of curate, they can sort of improve the return on investment for their collections. We also create the Palace Bookshelf, which is a large collection of free, it's really the only collection of its kind of free curated ebooks and audiobooks for really anyone in the general public, but libraries to take. And we're always open to suggestions of how we can do more. Obviously, we don't have magic wands to solve problems for libraries. We also try to convene libraries around important topics so we can figure out how to collaborate. So that is absolutely our mission, is to support libraries and librarians. And we're open to suggestions on how else we can do more of that.
Can I jump in and just add a couple really important things too, for advocacy? If you're looking for help with local stuff, the ARSL, the Association for Rural and Small Libraries, has a free advocacy center that is open to anyone. No, you don't have to be a member of ARSL to use it. And we know the ALA has, the reporting is really important. And that's how DPLA is going to get their information too about who needs this resource. If you report it, if it's not reported, all those attacks that are going unreported are a huge issue. So I would just add to make sure that you're reporting if it's happening in your local libraries, for sure. And I'll just drop in thanks, you did it. The ARSL Advocacy Center is a new tool, so we're building it right now.
Thank you, Jenny. That's great. I think that's absolutely right. So Rebecca, I would say, asked if we need volunteer assistance. We're certainly open to exploring that depending on your skill set. We do have a couple of librarians that volunteer as members of the curation corps. And so we'd be happy to chat with you if it's something that you'd like to help with. So just reach out to us by email. Kat will drop some email options in the chat. And we really appreciate your enthusiasm. Arena, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, about why book banning has gotten so bad. I want to invite Taslin or anyone else to speak to this. I don't really, that's a deep answer that goes beyond my remit here in terms of kind of the culture wars and all the other things that have played into it. I think you're right that, there are sometimes books that aren't being borrowed a lot and are still being banned. I would say, digital readership is on the rise in the US through libraries and independently. Audiobooks are the fastest growing format in libraries and are growing quickly. So I think library service is, alive, well, and critical, especially for people that don't have other ways to access books. I don't know, Taslin, if you want to weigh in on, why book banning has been on the rise or what's driving that, you're probably better positioned to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in part what we're seeing is the weaponization of people's fears. I want to make it really clear that libraries have always had a means by which you can challenge books, and you can have those conversations in partnership with librarians and school administrators and library directors. There has been a process in place, and people have taken that process and worked it and used it because we're talking about a bigger battle over public education and sort of public spaces. And the best thing I can tell people is I often come into conversations, I'm like, I'm going to tell you a lot of really bad stuff, and you're going to feel really depressed and frustrated and worried. But here's the other half of that. Everywhere where I find book bans, I find parents and communities organizing to support their libraries. Sometimes they're late. Sometimes they woke up to the issue, because I know, like, I didn't go to my school board meeting until I started working on this issue, because I thought everything was fine. I was cool. My kids were great. Everything was fun and relaxed, and I had no problems. Little did I know that there were a small minority of people who were actively campaigning against books and libraries and access. And they are, yeah, I just saw a comment about the highly organized. They are very highly organized. I'm happy to talk about that. But what I really want to emphasize is there are parents everywhere organizing themselves in response. There are communities who say that their libraries are important, who are showing up. We find over and over again that people don't like book bans. People don't like people harassing librarians. And so I am really lucky that I get to talk to a lot of folks that jump in and speak to these issues. And I want everybody to remember, like, look for, what do they say? Look for the helpers. Like, there are people in almost every community working to push back.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's not all bad. And I think the enthusiasm for projects like this shows the strong support for intellectual freedom and for access that really the vast majority of the country feels. So, it's this very active local minority. I just wanted to speak briefly to a question from Jackson Harper that I answered in writing, which is about the Lyrasis Palace bookshelf privacy protections. We really try in everything we do to be driven by library values, and patron privacy is very high amongst those. So the whole Palace project system really collects, as little information as possible about patrons. We never sell that patron information. In most instances, all we really do is confirm a library card number with a library authentication system to say, yes, you're an approved user, and that's it. So we think we have absolutely best-in-class privacy protections. The Palace bookshelf, all the books are completely open. They're DRM free. They're openly licensed. So there's never any information whatsoever collected about users. You can be completely anonymous as you use the Palace bookshelf. But thank you, Jackson, for your attention to that issue, which is really important to us.
Mike,
Yeah, please.
Would you mind if I just jump in? I'm not going to say anything you didn't say. Just want to emphasize the fact that Lyrasis is a library organization. We are librarians running this on behalf of libraries. And so we're very attentive to the issues of patron privacy. So we do, of course, have personally identifiable information, but we don't associate that with transactions. So we have to collect information about use and users, but we don't associate those things, and we certainly don't share that information. So we're very diligent about the ways that we ensure that patron privacy is protected in the system.
Thank you, John. Yeah, that's really important to us. So, Kathy, I see your question about how this is different from the Brooklyn Public Library issues, which is a great question. I mean, I think, first of all, I would just say we have had extensive discussions with Brooklyn Public and now Seattle Public, who has joined their Books Unbanned effort that you're referring to. It's a fabulous project. The two projects are a little different, and I think they're nice supplements. I mean, we want to kind of have, what lawyers might call a belt and suspenders approach to making sure everyone has access. So, double coverage here. So the Books Unbanned project, basically, if you're a young adult, it's only open to young adults. You can write a email to Brooklyn or to Seattle Public Libraries, and they will just give you a library card to their library. So that's one way that young adults in areas impacted by bans can get access. So, some of the differences with this project is available to anyone in those geographies, regardless of your age. You don't necessarily have to do a special application or tell us anything about yourselves. And one of the differences that we have really gone to great lengths to buy all the books. So if you're getting a books on band card, that's tremendous. Actually, you can get access to a much larger collection because you have access to the entire Brooklyn or Seattle Public Library collection. We have systematically tried to buy all the books that have been removed to make sure that it covers them. So yes, I think the short answer is we see these as supplementary, complementary services. We're really excited about, joining forces with our colleagues across the library world. I think, librarians, almost universally support access and oppose this kind of censorship. And we want to work with them as much as possible to have multiple avenues for people to access this content. So Kathy, I hope that answers your question.
Hey, Micah, I have a question actually.
Yeah.
What's the avenue for people if they have a ban occur and they say they go on and they don't see their area? Is there an avenue for them to add or to tell you?
Yeah, absolutely. There is. So there is a link on the website, which I can try to find and drop in the chat. So we welcome folks alerting us to bans we're not aware of. We will be sharing that information back with Taslan and the EveryLibrary PEN America team so that they can track it as well, and that we can together build the best possible data set. There are some sort of processes involved in getting those new locations, if it's a new location or new books added. So our commitment is to try to sort of update that at least once a quarter. So that we'll be adding new locations and then new titles if there are new bans that we weren't previously aware of. Does that answer your question, Jenny? And I'll try to find that link to where you can actually report a book, but I'm sure there is one.
I got it, Micah. All set.
Kat's always fast on the draw, beat me to it.
One of the things that I find really exciting about this project is that we see, like, I worry a lot about bans, but there are also many kids that don't have access to public libraries necessarily, and they don't have access to school libraries. So like access is the underlying problem. And I think there was a question that I started to answer on there, but this project has the opportunity to really get at some of those deeper questions about equity and access as it develops. And that to me is the most important and the exciting thing to come out of it, is that providing more access to more kids in more places will be beneficial to everyone.
Absolutely. That's really exciting. Okay, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is unprecedented for us. But if there aren't any other questions from folks, I guess we'll move towards closing this out. So to close this out, I'd like to pass the mic to our friend and colleague who you've already heard from, John Wilkin. John is the Chief Executive Officer of Lyrasis. And as we've mentioned, Lyrasis is DPLA's close strategic partner in the Palace Project and in this Banned Book Club project. So we're really grateful to Lyrasis and to John's leadership, which has made all of this possible. John, do you want to bring us home?
Hey, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm John Wilkin. I'm the CEO of Lyrasis, and I'm a librarian, decades long in the field, and so this is very, very exciting to me to be a part of this. I want to thank everyone, DPLA as a partner in this, absolutely extraordinary. Their advocacy, their being on the front line on this is very important. And Taslan and Jenny too. I think the work that you do is very, very important, and thank you for what you've contributed today. At Lyrasis, we're a nonprofit. We're a library-owned nonprofit, and it's a real pleasure to be this almost silent partner in the enterprise, the infrastructure behind the scenes, and to help make this possible. It's one of the ways that we can help our libraries in the community. I think it's truly astonishing what we're seeing right now, the threats to libraries, the threats to intellectual freedom, the threats to books and the ways that they advance our understanding and create a sense of belonging are alarming. And I think we all feel that way. That's, I think, a given. We need to let our voices be heard in support of intellectual freedom, and bringing together allies in venues like this to support the work is critical. As we close today, I'd like to highlight one important way that we can fight on behalf of the set of diverse voices represented in the Banned Books Club. So as I said, Lyris is a community-owned nonprofit working on behalf of libraries, also archives and museums. We have about 1,000 members around the world. And by virtue of that community, our funding is rock solid. More important than our funding, though, is our place in the community. We are oven for libraries, archives, and museums. And in the same way that DPLA exists on behalf of the community, that's what we're here for. I mentioned this and Lyris's role in order to make a point. The partnership between DPLA and Lyris is an important tool in our, and I say our repertoire, I mean those who are working on behalf of readers. Adds that to our repertoire. Through the partnership, through Palace, libraries specifically own a platform for delivery of these books. And you've heard Micah talk about that at length, John Bracken as well, about the work that we're doing here on behalf of libraries and readers. Our ownership of the platform, the Palace platform, ensures that we have the means by which to provide access that align diversity and access with the values of libraries. And that's the point I want to make here. This is not a publisher enterprise. It's not an individual library enterprise, both of which can be susceptible to pressure. So publishers particularly, but individual libraries, I think, subject to funder pressures, for example. And we can sit outside of that and work on your behalf. We can resist the pressures that others face. I want to argue here that Palace has an entirely free hand in doing what we're doing, but I think you would agree that owning the ebook delivery platform can make a tremendous difference for the work of libraries and the rights of readers. And I think that those are the two most important things that I want to emphasize here. So I'll emphasize that and make a pitch. Please help ensure the long-term viability of Palace so that we, on your behalf, can serve libraries and readers. You can do that by spreading the word. You can do that by helping promote adoption. We're going to be here for you. So with that, I want to end again by thanking everyone for joining us for the questions, which were brilliant. The speakers, Jenny, Teslin, Micah, thank you very much, and everybody for their participation. Thanks a bunch.